going from there. Okay, so here it is. This is actually a tea box or tea caddy owned by Elizabeth Monroe. So that's right. So this little tiny box here, that's a tea caddy. And here we go. I'll give you sort of a closer look. And this thing is really cool. It's tiny. It's compact. And it's sort of the cousin of the tea chest. And if you look at it very closely, okay, so it features, it has mahogany veneer, okay? If you look around on this way, it has mahogany veneer. It's a box, that's right. Mahogany veneer. It features a handle on the top here of cast bronze. And it features a lock right here that's going in right there. And let me see if I can get up there, get up nice and close to where the lock is. Okay. And there it is. So tea caddies, they were made extensively in the 18th and early 19th century in England in a variety of designs. They were smaller versions of their larger cousins, like I said, the tea chest. So these are sort of the smaller versions of the tea chest. Very small, very compact. It's kind of portable almost in a way. And they often featured exotic wood, and in this case, it's mahogany. So that is in keeping with a lot of the tea caddies they were doing at the time. And you know, it's funny because tea was thought of as a medicinal beverage in a lot of times until the mid 18th century when it started to be using as a breakfast beverage and later an afternoon drink for households. Now, here's the thing that's kind of interesting about this, and so. Something when I was talking about artifacts and how they might differ from back in the day to artifacts today. So today we have tea boxes, right? And we have, you have, those tea tins and things like that. No big deal. Well, it's kind of like a similar thing here. And I'll show you sort of the inside of there. So you see it's broken up in compartments there. Okay. Kind of some compartment breaking up. But what's the difference between the artifact from back then and the artifact now? Well, if you look at it, the key, look at that lockbox, okay? So there's the lock. And today, in the tea tins and stuff that we get at the store, you typically don't see, you go down to Whole Foods and you probably don't see a lock that's going to be on the tea box, to keep the intruders out. And so that's a big difference because back in the day, tea, is imported and it was, it's imported now a lot of times, but, it was a lot more expensive. So tea was sort of considered a kind of a luxury, or well, not so much luxury, but it was an more expensive item. So they kept it under lock and key, and so that's a big difference. Today they might make tea caddies today where they have a lock on there just for for nostalgic purposes, but really there's really no need for that now, right? So there we go. They have a lock on there. So how do they make this thing? What's the deal? What's going on here? Well, something that's sort of interesting about this is if you look at this is mahogany, okay? And I'll try to get a good light shining on it so that you can see the grain. Can you see the grain on there? Okay, so mahogany was an expensive wood. There's a couple types of mahogany. One, you hear about mahogany in antique furniture all the time. Well, why mahogany? What's the big deal? Well, first of all, you can look at it. It's a beautiful wood, right? It's got that deep sort of brown, almost red kind of quality to it. And so, well, what's the difference between that and walnut? Well, walnut is also a beautiful wood, but walnut doesn't have as much usually as sort of these almost like kind of reddish streaks in them. At least in my opinion, everyone, you can see different colors if you want, but in my opinion, that has a little bit sort of more of a reddish color, a little bit more fluid. And mahogany, there's two types. Well, there's a few types, but sort of the main ones are African mahogany and South American mahogany. And so the mahogany was imported, whereas walnut would grow here. Today you can go outside and see a walnut tree all the time, right? But mahogany really only grows in tropical environments. So, mahogany was considered a little more expensive wood, and it was imported a lot of times. And something that's interesting is like, well, okay, if you look at it, it's kind of cool. Let me try to pull it up here. If you look at it, so the inside of it, you see sort of this mahogany on there, but there's a veneer going on. And what do I mean by veneer? What is veneer? You hear that term veneer all the time. Well, veneer is kind of what it sounds like. It's a very thin slab of wood that they would cut, and it looks super, super thin, and then they would place that over top the wood that was underneath the furniture. So that's what you're seeing right here, is you're actually seeing a really thin slab of wood over top the original wood on the inside. And it's interesting because if you look at the bottom of it, I'll turn this around very carefully, but if you look at the bottom of it, there's actually, it's actually mahogany on the bottom as well, which is sort of interesting. It's like, so why would you need veneer on the top for it? Well, it's probably because the grain of this particular veneer on the top is usually a lot more pretty than the grain of the wood that's underneath it, and that's a lot of times why they would do veneer. And so, whenever you see, you know, if you have an antique piece of furniture at home, try this. Open up that antique piece of furniture and look at, you know, if it has a really pretty wood on the outside, look it up and look at the drawer on the inside. And a lot of times, I bet you dollars to donuts, it's actually made of a different wood or a different cut, excuse me, of the particular wood that's on the outside. It might be made of poplar a lot of times, sometimes pine, things like that. And the reason for that is so they can get the veneer, quote unquote, of the pretty wood that's on the outside. It makes it look like the whole thing is made out of a solid block of that really precious, pretty wood. And a lot of times you'll see that the veneer comes from the burl that is of the wood. And when I talk about the burl of the tree is that big, you know, round sort of knot looking thing that sticks out on trees a lot of time. And so they would cut that, and that's considered very valuable actually. So a lot of times they would use the burl on the outside, and so they would get that sort of really pretty sort of veneer going in there. So how would they construct this? Well, I'll look it up, or if I open up in here, you see, look at the corner here, okay? Okay, when I show you this corner, they're not doing it like this, you know, where they have the outside and then the side walls like this. They're not doing it like that. They're doing it at where they cut it, where it meets at an angle. So they get that really nice snug fit look, and the snugness in the corner is actually at the actual corner rather than if you wanted it over its top like that. You see the cut would go along the side here. So that's a sign of good craftsmanship. If you have an antique at home and you're looking for that, that's a sign of good craftsmanship, is if they do that on top. Also, something that's sort of interesting, if you look at the inside, okay, you look very closely at that, you could see what they did with the lock mechanism. Take a look at the lock, okay? And what they did was they would have the outside wall of the tea caddy, and then they would cut inside and make a cut on there, and then they would chisel down into that cut and make room for the actual inlay of the lock mechanism itself. And that's how they did that. So they would put that down in there, and you see, I'll show you it once more again. And then they would cut through, and a lot of times on the outside they would have a piece, and this is actually brass, it looks like, a piece on the outside to get that cover and get that on there. So that's actually what that is. And then they'd have the hinges on the outside here, and then they would have the handle on the top, and you see the handle's very nicely, like a fancy decoration on the handle on the outside. And that is not carved into the brass itself. That's actually not carved in there. They would cast that. And so what the furniture makers, they you know, what they would do, and a lot of times they can take them from a brass maker, and they would make a master carving of the handle itself, and then they would do cast of that. So they would have constant casts of this. So not so much manufacturing in the way we think of it today, but in a sense they can make multiple copies of the same handle. So whenever you see like handles and things on antique furniture, on the drawers and things like that, whenever you see those antique handles and you see they're all made the same, it's not because they sat there and exactingly made each one the same. It's because they're cast from the same mold. You know, usually brass, you know, sometimes bronze, you know, things like that. So anyway, there's a tea caddy for you, and again, it's nice and tight. It's the cousin of the tea chest, and it's nice and small and compact, and it was owned by Elizabeth Monroe. It's about 1800 is about the date of this tea caddy. So there you go. All right. So the second thing I wanted to show you is this. I'm going to show you this. Okay. There we go. Okay, what's going on with this? All right, these are a pair of circa 1810, 1820 silver-framed eyeglasses, and they were worn by James Monroe. You can see there the magnifying glass. They're rectangular shaped and with beveled edges. They're silver earpieces or temple bars. They're adjustable and equipped with a small loop at the end. So if I could show you carefully, at the end you can see that they're actually adjustable on the ends, so they can move in and out and adjust to your head. And they have a small loop, see here on the end, so that you can tie a string, ribbon, cord, or chain, or something like that to be attached to the eyeglasses. And so in that way, the glasses can be worn around the head and hung, just like you see today. And so, you know, I remember, I think my grandmother, she would have glasses that had the tie around there, and a lot of people do, because it's just very convenient. And James Monroe was no different. And the glasses, they're actually hallmarked, but the mark that's on them is too faded to identify what it is. But, you know, Monroe, he often wore eyeglasses for reading, particularly later in life. And, you know, as a public servant, you know, Monroe would have had just an abundance of paperwork and all sorts. So his eyes, you know, were constantly working, letter writing. And so his eyeglasses, they were essential to his daily tasks. And it's sort of interesting, like I was saying, the telescoping side made it adjustable so that, you know, you can actually adjust them to his particular head size. And, you know, what I also think is kind of cool is if you look at this particular style of glasses, you see this a lot, like at hipsters and things like that. At least they did a few years ago. I don't know if that's still considered cool or not. But this particular style, you know, you go to the coffee shop and see a hipster wearing wearing a style of glasses that was not unlike, you know, James Monroe might have worn. And considering the date of these glasses, there's a possibility he wore this while in the White House. So there you go with it. And it's so interesting. So he actually did wear glasses. He actually had glasses, you know, not contact lenses. You know, it was a little before those times, but he had glasses with telescoping lens and silver around the rims. So that's kind of cool, I think. So let me review here real quick for you. Here's a Tea Caddy. They were made extensively in the 18th and 19th, early 19th century. And they had a wide variety of designs. So this is a small, compact one. You know, it has hinges on the back and it has a lock on the front. And they have the lock because back in the day, tea was a little more expensive. So they actually would lock up their tea. And with a nice mahogany veneer. And I was talking about the veneer, the thin slices that go over the outside of the wood. And then, we'll put this down here. And then one more time, I'll show you these glasses worn by James Monroe about 1810, 1820. And they have the telescoping end. And considering the date, there's a possibility that they were worn at the White House. So there you go. So thank you so much for joining in. Really, really appreciate it. If you get a chance, this is shameless shameless promotion. But if you get a chance, there's a pinned post on our Facebook page, which leads to our giving page. And if you get a chance and you can at all, we would certainly appreciate a little bit of a donation. You know, we're all in this together. But anyway, I'll stop shamelessly promoting. But thank you so much for joining in, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. All right, goodbye.